Okay, so we're going to go over the alphabet. Das Alphabet. That's what it's called in German. Das Alphabet. So German has the same characters as the English alphabet, so the one that we use, except we also have a few extras which we may have already seen, such as the Umlaut and the Eszett. But we're going to start with just the basic characters. So for the first one, the letter A, this is pronounced like if you go to the dentist and they say open wide and say ah, the letter A is ah. Ah. Our next letter starts us with a new sound. So we're going to call this one B. B. And if we think of the last two letters here as just like in the English alphabet when we pronounce B, and then we have the letter E and C, D, and so on, it's going to work very similarly in German. So B, that new sound is going to work throughout a few other letters. So A and then B. Up next we have C, C. Now it's important to note here as well that we have a TS sound, and those letters are combined together to make a ts sound. So it's C. Alright, you might be able to guess what the next one is. D. D. So again, basing the sound off of what we got first from the letter B, and that continues to repeat here. So we have A, B, C, D. Our next one is A. A. And so that's just that sound alone that we saw on B, C, D, and now A. Alright, the next one is very similar to English. The only thing that I say a little bit differently, German has more intention when you speak it. English is kind of lazy with the way we move our mouths, so it's F in English, but in German I would say it's more pronounced, so it's F. F. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F. And just like English goes back to that E sound for the letter G, we're going to, in German, go back to that A sound. So G is G. G. Make sure that you also note that that is a hard G. So it's G. G. Alright, so moving to the letter H. And just like in English when we have the letter A, it makes a very similar sound to the letter H. It's at that start, H. So in German, we're going to go back to, if you want to add an H there you can, just to show the sound repetition here. Our letter A was A, and now our letter for H is Ha. Ha. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. And then the letter I. And the letter I, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to put that in quotation marks rather, the letter E. So it's very similar to the English letter E in pronunciation. It's a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit tighter of a sound, so it's pronounced E. E. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. And then we get to J. And just like you may have noticed, a lot of J sounds in German sound like a Y. Most sounds, unless a word is adopted from another language, which can sometimes change it. But the letter J is Yot. Yot. So that's a longer O sound. Yot. So if we think of a word like Ya, we have the Y sound from the J, Ya, and then we also have the letter A, which makes the A sound, so we have Ya. Alright, so up to this point we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Our next one, again, think of English. The K has the A sound in it, and just like German, it's going to repeat that, but with the German A sound. So Ka. Ka. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Next one, not quite as tricky, but again, German has a lot more intention and pronunciation of letters. It's very clear. So it's L, L. A very defined L sound. L. Alright, the next few are very similar to English, but not quite the same. So up next, we get to M, and M is M. M. So again, more pronounced, defined, clear. The same is going to be true for the letter N. So again, N. N. And then we get to the letter O. And the letter O, again, is very similar to English. But this one we have to be careful with. So it's O, O, but later we're going to get to the letter U, which some people kind of get these two confused at times. So we have to be careful that we pronounce this O with rounded lips, as if we're saying or making the O shape with our mouth. So it's O. Alright, and up to this point we should have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O. Alright, our next letter, P. Going back to our E sound. P. P. Okay. Alright, The Q is similar to English. It's almost like saying Q without the U sound in it. So we get rid of that and it becomes cool. Cool. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q. And our next letter, a little bit trickier. And this time I'm going to put in quotations the word air because it's similar again to the English word air, but not quite the same. So the letter is pronounced air. Air. So the R sound is much softer when you end the sound as opposed to the English word air, where we have that very lazy R sound at the end. Air. Okay, moving on to another similar letter to English. S. S. So we're up to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S. And now we get to T. So again, going back to that E sound. Again, very similar to English. The letter T, sharing that E sound, and then we have the letter T in German, T, sharing the E sound, A. Okay, our next letter is the one that I mentioned before. You gotta be very careful. I'm gonna put two O's to make that oo, oo sound. So, oo, as opposed to previously the letter O, which we pronounced as O. Oo, O. So this is oo, and this is O. Oo, O. Those are two letters you might want to practice in addition to the rest, but specifically these two because they're a little tricky to tell apart. Alright, moving on to the letter V. Okay, so the German letter V is pronounced V. V. And this is almost like the pronunciation of the English word foul, F-O-U-L, but without the L sound, so foul. Now this one doesn't follow the same rule that we saw some of the other letters were following, where they were very similar to English, because in English it's pronounced V, and we have that E sound. So you might think that it would have the E, German E sound, but that's not the case. And this is why the next letter might be a little bit confusing to people. So for the letter W, this one is pronounced V. V. And that's why some people get confused with these two. Now, an easy way to remember this would be to remember the German company Volkswagen, or otherwise known as, not written out like this, but VW. So when you say the two letters VW, that's why they're called VW, because it's VW. We say the same thing in English. So if you think of their name, their abbreviation in German, VW, it's the same order as the alphabet. So that should help you to remember the pronunciation if you forget or you're not sure. So we have VW. So up to this point, we should have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, V. Our next letter is X. X. Very similar to the English X. We have that same X sound. The only change is our initial sound. So instead of E, it's I. X. X. Okay, the letter Y is a little tricky. Not quite the same as the English letter Y. So this is pronounced Ypsilon. Ypsilon. And the Y sound here is a little weird as well. So it's Ypsilon. Ypsilon. Okay. So that sound of the word there, that initial sound, is going to carry through to other words that have the letter Y in them. Unless it is at the beginning of a word, such as yak. So it has then that English Y sound. Yak. Okay, our very last letter here is, and I'm writing it the wrong way here, let me restart. Our last letter is Z. Z. Now, if you know anything about the English alphabet, not the American English alphabet, but the English alphabet, this letter is not pronounced Z, it is pronounced Z. And that comes from the German, so Z. And that last T is kind of a combination of two sounds, Z. So instead of thinking of the American English alphabet, think of the British English, Canadian, etc. Z, and that will hopefully help you remember Z. Z. Alright, so the entire alphabet, if we go through, we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Okay, practice your alphabet, get those sounds down, and that should help you with pronunciation of words.